tepache, cabritada, machucado, migas, pecan pie, pickles pork feet, enchiladas. These are some of the recipes my grandfather, Raul Rendon, left to us when he passed away. My name is Gianna Elvia Rendon, and this is Remembering Abuelos, History through Recetas.
My name is Priscilla Pacina. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Lived here my whole life. My family's lived in Texas and San Antonio for multiple generations. This is home. Everything with my family revolves around food. It doesn't matter if it's a birthday, if we're just gonna have a movie night, or every holiday event. It's always revolves around food.
I asked Priscilla if her family had any recipes that they consider traditional Mexican food that aren't considered traditional to the rest of the population.
Like my favorite one as a kid growing up is crispy dogs. You know, it's the American hot dog, but wrapped up in a corn tortilla and fried. And that's just what you live off, basically, when you're under the age of 10 in San Antonio. My grandma was the best at making all of that crispy stuff. The crispy dogs, the flautas. So fun. I think it's actually for my family, it's the last meal that my grandma was able to cook for me when she still could cook.
So I wanted to interview Priscilla because I've known her for 15 years. We met in high school. Her family is from the West Side, just like mine. She studied anthropology from Texas State University. And like me, she's very interested in preserving cultures, especially the cultures of San Antonio.
I'm sitting at Priscilla's kitchen table and I ask her about the pandemic. I started this project with the idea of archiving people's COVID-19 food stories. I was inspired by the massive amount of people posting their recipes on Instagram Live. Priscilla also shared with me a traditional food her family made when they were sick.
When it comes to getting better from just about anything you could imagine, it's always menudo and pozole that my mom's like, that'll knock it out. She does a very spicy pozole, so it literally clears out your sinuses, like all the way, your whole face. You feel like it's been purged. But it's true, it works. And with the menudo, my family, we make it the traditional way with the actual tripas and everything, but we don't like to eat it. We're part of that new generation that doesn't actually eat the tripe part. My mom will fill it with hominy and just eat it like that. It's basically just menudo flavored pozole as well.
I asked Priscilla to share with me about one dish that was special to her and her grandmother in particular.
So with cooking in the kitchen, it was just sort of this organic thing that happened with my family. My grandma would be making migas, and at some point she's just, she tells her daughter, my mother, Cynthia, you go ahead and make the migas. It's just something that you had to do after hanging around, seeing her in the kitchen work and, usually bothering your mom, or in this case, my grandma. Like, what are you doing? Is it ready yet? And she's like, well, if you want it so badly, here, you help. And that's sort of just how you learn in the kitchen. It was out of necessity, out of growing up, out of, getting a kid to stop being annoying. The usual family way, I guess, that things just happen. Just one day, and then you're cooking it by yourself, thinking about them. Migas for my family is just that easy, big portion breakfast that you can make, Saturday morning, and then you eat it all day till the pan is empty. Because you make it all in one big pan, and you leave it in that pan, and you serve out of that pan until the pan is empty. And at the end of the day, you wash it. But it's just always a real comfort food go-to again. The weekends of all of us together, everybody is just enjoying their day. My mom, my grandma having their coffee with their migas. Me putting extra cheese on my migas and then running off to go watch cartoons. It's just one of those everything is good in life family breakfasts. Unfortunately, during the pandemic is when my grandmother passed away. not from COVID or anything, but it just happened during that already stressful time. And the day after she passed, she was already gone, and the dish that my brother made to feed us all was migas, because my mom was beside herself. She was not gonna be able to cook for us, and I just couldn't believe my grandma was gone. So my brother went into the kitchen, he fried up some tortillas and made some creamy eggs and melted the cheese, and we had migas. It was something that was easy for all of us to eat when we weren't feeling that great.
I asked Priscilla to walk me through how she makes her family's migas recipe.
So you just take corn tortillas, and they can be like a day old or a little bit stale. It doesn't matter, because you're going to fry them up with oil till they're nice and crunchy and basically, tortilla chips. And then after that, you cook up some of the egg, nice and creamy, but a little bit firm. And you fry up. My mom, she liked to put bell peppers, tomatoes, and onions and fry it up all together. But me, of course, when I was young, I was picky and I was a kid, and it was just the egg, the migas, and then finished with cheese. So what my mom taught me specifically to do when making migas was, after all the corn chips have fried and they're crispy, you got some soft, some nice and crunchy, you push them all off to the side of the pan and you make a ring and leave a well in the middle. And in the well, you put an obscene amount of butter, and then you crack in 6 eggs. Gently cook till all the eggs are curdled and fluffy and glorious. Cook the eggs halfway, and then when they're halfway done, you add in the vegetables. You add your onion, your bell pepper or tomato if you like. And then you keep stirring them gently on low heat till they finish cooking. And then finally you just incorporate the egg and the veggie mixture with the rest of the crispy tortilla strips.
I'm sitting outside in the south side of San Antonio, Texas. Next up, I interviewed Kimberly Rendon. She is the creative behind Callejera Thrifts and Prints. She is a photographer and an artist, and she's here today to talk to me about her grandma.
Yeah, I always compared anything I ate to her food. And if it wasn't up to par, it was no good. It was like, it's not as good. The enchiladas, no, they're not as good as my grandma. The tortillas, they're not as good as hers and stuff like that. Because my grandmother was like the best cook, we felt, right? Growing up, she would make all the home cooked meals. And so my family migrated to Houston, I want to say a couple years before I was born. So they did not have that much time, specifically like my grandparents. But my dad being from San Antonio, they found work and everybody moved. So I'm talking about my parents, my uncles, my cousins. So we had a big family, and every time my grandmother would cook, everybody would come over. That would be like the meal. And so the things that I can remember growing up were the tortillas. Everybody wanted her to make tortillas, so she would make tortillas, tamales, everything. I can think like almost every food that she made, it just made it perfect. It was so good. I used to help her a couple times, once in a while in the kitchen, but she never wanted to have me in the kitchen, me and my sister. She would always say, you and your sister don't need to be here because y'all are going to be really smart and y'all are going to be doctors or y'all going to make a lot of money, and this is the last thing you need to worry about is like too good. And so that was her she didn't want us to be in that space, and that's it. Like, that's where we were going to be, She was like, you guys are smart. Y'all are going to, be great, individuals. So for me, it's been difficult because we haven't documented. A lot of the times, those recipes were on the spot with whatever was available. So it was never the same. It always changed. Something was a little bit different, or something was added extra. We had like carne this time, right? Or if we had extra like ingredients like vegetables, you know, so every time it was so different. She never documented. And I remember when she was literally on her deathbed, like she was sick from cancer. And so I said, oh my God, Grandma, you never taught me how to make tamales.
Kimberly explains to me that even though there is a loss of her grandmother's recipes, she has been re-envisioning and adapting these foods for her own family.
I recognize the importance of like documenting, right, the recipes and trying to remember. So I'm like talking to my mom. It's like, what did Grandma do to make this, or what ingredients to make that? And then I'm learning that I'm adapting whatever I have, and kind of like, playing with flavors and things like that. And so for me, it's been a challenge to really remember, oh, how did she make this? And it's probably never going to be the same, right? But at least it's going to be close to it, and me trying to honor what she made for us.
Kimberly shares with me a dish that her family makes when they're sick.
I think caldos have been something that I'm learning to incorporate a lot more, whether it's like even chicken or beef, or even just like shrimp, like seafood, and how to bring that back. Because I remember growing up and my mom made this like delicious like seafood soup. It's so good. And using that, the broth, right, the bone broth, and the chicken stock and stuff like that, and incorporating that into what we eat and what we cook. And I think it's been challenging in the pandemic because of access, right? A lot of times, I know a lot of folks, I know for me personally, just like focusing on like wellness and my health has been a challenge with everything, all the trauma, all the stress that's going on around. It's really difficult to focus on it because we're stuck in this like cycle, right? That's not necessarily healthy, right? And so for me, that's been a challenge.
Kimberly shared with me a little bit about her relationship with Tex-Mex food, as well as her relationship and stories of quote-unquote struggle meals.
Definitely weenies and bologna or even Spam have been things that we've incorporated. I was thinking about my grandmother and incorporating these. She wasn't accustomed to using these ingredients at all, right? She was more like, frijoles and arroz. And so, but I remember she would make these like crispy dogs with the weenies, right? And and make that for us, and to see like how she adapted to like even Tex-Mex, right? Tex-Mex food is something that I didn't necessarily grow up with until I maybe got older. But certain things like that, in our charo beans, we would put weenies because it's what we had and what we could afford. Growing up, you don't even recognize that like maybe you're in a struggle. This is like normal, right? And so I know my grandma would incorporate weenies and like charo beans, and we always thought that's how charo beans were. And I remember going to a quinceañera or a wedding, and they had this like big batch of charo beans, and we're like, no, wait, hold on, we've been eating the wrong thing. Like, this is charo beans, these are like bomb, these are so good, like, or it's a special occasion, we can afford the more expensive meat. But like during the week, we'll use weenies and bologna and like chopped ham, tea with huevos, because it's like a lot cheaper, and you can make multiple meals throughout the week with that, right?
I'm going to take you on a journey now to the east side of San Antonio, Texas, to Sunshine Bakery, where Kayla Mata will be talking about her family's panaderia.
Pan de polvo, conchas and empanadas, polvorones, basic sugar cookies, cuernos, like all the like traditional pan dulce that I make is because my grandpa taught me how to do it. My name is Kayla Mata, and I am the owner of Sunshine Bakery on San Antonio's east side. My grandparents were the original owners.
Before Kayla's grandparents started Sunshine Bakery, they worked at various baking jobs. Her grandfather worked at a colonial bakery factory, and her grandmother was a cake decorator at grocery stores.
And they said whenever they were driving in the car, they would drive past this building and my grandma would be like, that's gonna be my bakery, that's gonna be my bakery. That's kind of like how Sunshine Bakery came to be. One of my earliest memories with baking is just hanging out here after school. So I would just like be able to get whatever I wanted, and I would always get like we don't make them anymore, and he doesn't make them anymore. They were like these croissants, but they weren't like the flaky French croissants. Like it was just like something that he would make like with like he would just stick a bunch of butter between them and like roll them up to look like croissants. That was like my favorite since I was like little, like my daughter's age. My grandparents used to get like really big like wedding and quinceañera orders. I mean, weddings and quinceañeras are a lot of money, so she would be like, here, I'll give you $20, just go pass out like cake to people on plates. So I was just kind of like, ooh, money, like, and I just have to go give people their cake. So it was kind of like I started doing that, just watching and then just helping at like bigger parties that they would do.
As an adult, Kayla followed in her grandmother's footsteps and also worked at a bakery in a grocery store. Her first scratch baking project was making vegan conchas and pan dulce for her friends. In 2017, her grandparents retired and she took over the family panaderia. I'm recording this last part of my narration on the kitchen table, drinking a cup of hot tea. And I hope that this reaches you in your kitchen table. Thank you for joining me on this food journey. My name is Gianna Elvia, and this has been Remembering Abuelos, History Through Recetas.
This episode was hosted and directed by Gianna Elvia, a 2022 Community Folklife Fellow. The Folklorist Next-door is brought to you by Texas Folklife. Our technical producer is J.A. Strub. Our executive producer is Janelle Ramirez. To learn more about the fellows and their projects, visit us at texasfolklife.org. This project is supported in part from an award from the National Endowment for the Arts.